Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today is the day that we have our Heat Geek Zero Disrupt survey. So there's a firm coming out that was identified through the Heat Geek Zero Disrupt website. My quote for, or my estimate for what it might be is here. And here is my original quote for a non-zero disrupt install, which was for a 45-degree low flow temperature install with some remedial works to one pipe and every radiator being swapped and upgraded in order to achieve that 45-degree system. Now that was £13,500, and I went back to the installer because I didn't have £13,500 and said, well, what if we just do a zero disrupt like install, where we don't change the radiators and we just see what the system could do and what it could achieve, and could I get the install cost down or the capital upfront cost down. And he came back to me, Mark from Green Home Solutions, or Green Heating Solutions, forget the name now, and we came back with a £9,000 figure. So that was for an install of a new 250 or 300 litre cylinder in my utility room, without the remedial pipework changing and no radiator changes, just putting a 12 kilowatt vaillant in my garden and the new hot water cylinder. And that was for £9,000. Now, Heat Geek are now using this AI method of assessing homes and doing their heat loss. So they were doing this before, but they're going around with an iPad, taking pictures of the room to get auto dimensions, putting that into their heat loss software, and then manually going through things still and saying, well, actually, you know, what size radiator do we need to make for each room to match the heat loss of each room to the the radiator size, the heat output of each radiator to the heat loss of the room. Need to match those. So they were doing that by manual still. Now they have an AI system that does it for them, or an algorithm that does it for them. I think I prefer the term algorithm. And because it takes so much of a human being or an engineer, a highly trained engineer's time out of the equation, it can be money saving. So the zero disrupt figure for installing me a SCOP 4 system may or may not be possible on my current heating system, so this may not be realistic for this house, is £7,800, which is good, but I don't think we'll be able to achieve that. That's for a SCOP of 4. They also do two other tiers, and one is a SCOP of 3.7 and one is a SCOP of 3.4. Now, I'm imagining that the flow temperature for my house to achieve a SCOP of 4 will be about 45 degrees, or a weather compensation curve on your coldest day that's 45 degrees, and on warmer days where it's 12 outside, not -2 or whatever, it would be a lot lower, but that's what the maximum it would go up to. For the 3.7, I would estimate it would be just below 50, and for the 3.4 system, I would estimate it would be 55. It might be that my system, from my previous Heat Geek quote, that the temperature would have to be 55 degrees to work on my current radiators. Now, I'm not against upgrading my current radiators at all, but it's just where the capital cost, even for someone who's relatively well off here in the UK as a UK doctor, is just a bit much. The £13,500 for my house, because it's very leaky of air, would mean all these radiators need to change to enable a low flow system, and then it just adds up, and £13,500 was just a bit too tasty. However, here is one of the setbacks. Recently, to try and reduce barriers for people to get heat pumps, especially in terrace houses like mine, the government has changed the planning rules to make it easier for people like me to get a heat pump. But I think they've messed the rules up. So one of the things they took away was a 1 metre rule. That means you can't have a heat pump within a metre of the boundary of our property. And so they got rid of that to make it easier for this terraced house like I'm in, where I've only got a 6 metre wide property, to get a heat pump install. And they said, let's get rid of that. That's a barrier. Smashing. But at the same time, they reduced the noise assessment or the noise calculation. The MCS noise calculator threshold was reduced. It used to be 42 decibels. And so I will put up a picture that I found on the internet about what 42 decibels means. Decibels is a logarithmic scale. So like standing right next to a jet engine or a Formula 1 car is like 120 decibels. And logarithmic means that each 10 you go up is actually 100 increase, 100-fold increase. So actually the change from 42 decibels, which is whisper quiet, much quieter than I'm speaking to you now, is quite low anyway. They've reduced it from 42 to 37. So in the past, a 12 kilowatt vaillant put where I want to put my heat pump, right next to where it goes into the cylinder, the sort of the best, most convenient place, is in fact going to be calculated at how loud it would be to my neighbour's bedroom window, because you don't want to keep them up with a loud, noisy thing, but a whisper is less of a problem. So in the past, my noise assessment was that at my neighbour's window, it was going to be 39 decibels. And that is below the 42 decibel threshold of the old planning rules or the old permitted development rules. Now, they've lowered that. So they've expanded the 1 metre rule so you can be within a metre of your property boundary. Wonderful, let's make it easier. But they've reduced this noise threshold dramatically. And that 7 decibel limit is actually 5 times quieter, which is kind of crazy. And so I fail the 37 decibel limit according to my British Gas survey. So I'm kind of nervous for the Heat Geek to come round about the noise calculation. Now, I'm not nervous that I would pee my neighbours off with 39 decibels of noise on a hot water cycle. I think that is not going to happen. I think that they've got double glazing. I think that they wouldn't hear it while they're asleep if I did my hot water cycle overnight. And I think that if we go see a neighbour's heat pump and just put the microphone outside the heat pump, you're not really going to hear it. You're just going to hear a bit of wind, and you're certainly not going to be like, oh God, I couldn't sleep through that. So I think it's kind of crazy. And I think the government have shot themselves in the foot and or just screwed me over a little bit. And perhaps I shouldn't have been so cheap, and perhaps I should have just got a green loan, a green mortgage loan of interest free from my bank for 2 years. And it kind of would have been done, it would have been in. So I could, of last year, have got £13,000 from my bank on a green mortgage, paid it off over 2 years, just about afforded it and been fine. But I didn't have a permanent contract at work, and I was like, well, I don't really want to take on this big loan right now, so I didn't do it. And in the interim, the government's changed the planning rules, the sound threshold's come down by 5-fold, and now I might not be able to get a heat pump in this property, which means I'm going to have to move or going to have to insulate it so I could get a smaller heat pump that'll be less noisy. So yeah, I'm a bit nervous about having Heat Geek round and what he's going to say. The other options are that I think of an alternative placement for the heat pump, and for various reasons, I think the rest of them are a bit of a no. Hello everyone, welcome to the rear yard. I'm just outside my utility room on the rear extension. It's a lean-to on the original solid wall brick rear extension. This is cavity insulated though, which is great. Here is my EV charger. So ideally, if it was slimline, the thing could go here and just point away from the building. But I've got a solid wall right here, and actually propane heat pumps are not allowed near a wall. And actually there's a limit to how close you can be to walls. You've got to be a little bit out so you've got good airflow behind the heat pump so it can pull air around from the sides through and out and through the coils and out the fan for the heat pump to work well. So you need good airflow, which is another reason why this area, kids don't really use the trampoline anymore. Do saw the roof box here, but you know, ideally I would just have it here and it would just blow over here and not be a problem, and that's where we'd have the heat pump. But noise calculations mean that if you have solid walls around where you are, that you can't, that they, instead of noise dissipating that way and this way and backwards, it would all get funneled towards and be strengthened, so you get multipliers for each solid wall you have nearby. And actually air clearance reasons why you need a certain amount of clearance for the side of a heat pump or where it could be, so it couldn't be here either. So need to think of another place for it to go. So that's the first half of the video, guys, before the Heat Geek engineer turns up. He's from a firm based in Prudder. His name's Michael. I'm really looking forward to come round. He sounds really professional and like he really knows his stuff when he called me the other day. So hopefully we can come up with a solution that works, and then I can actually get this Heat Geek install, and I will hand over the cash in a bag and get my install booked ASAP, and I could have it in this winter if we can come up with a way that the sound issue can be fixed. But I'm really nervous. So first half of the video, why I'm nervous about the MCS sound calculations and what might be happening. And we'll just have to see what happens after that. I'm not sure how the cookie's going to crumble with that. And the second half of the video will be all about my chat with him. I don't think I'll get him on mic or camera or anything. He might not be comfortable with that. But I can always ask him and we'll see what we can do. And if you want to help, then if the sound is a problem, let's all write to Ed Miliband and or your local MP and or your local council. And let's try and get the planning rules for heat pumps changed, because 42 decibels, as I'll show you in this picture here, really is whisper quiet, and you won't be able to hear the heat pump. It's not going to keep your neighbours awake at night. Hi everyone, so that is the Heat Geek Zero Disrupt survey done. It's a £250 non-refundable deposit to get them to come round and do your heat loss survey for you. It is a fully AI enabled survey, so they've got a LiDAR built into an iPad and it surveys the room for you. It does throw some errors every now and again. Michael from Your Plumbing, who lives and works in Prudhoe but covers the Newcastle area, found that it wasn't accepting some of the pitched roofs. It gets confused by some dormer windows or some skylights, and also if you put in a custom U value for a wall where you've measured the thickness and it's a bit different to the rest of the room, it gets a bit confused, so it's not perfect. We have to redo a few things and it had to take a while. And it's a room by room heat loss survey. It builds a house, you put which rooms connect to which. It doesn't do a floor plan, but then it throws out, could we manage to do a zero disrupt install? The result from that is that no, I cannot. And it's what I was nervous about. And what I was nervous about was the MCS Noise criteria for the heat pump. British Gas had said that it would fail the criteria, and what British Gas told me was, hey Rainbow, sorry, short interlude while we took the kids swimming. So what British Gas told me was that when the 1 metre rule was removed from UK planning regulations, they tightened up the sound criteria. That previously level of 42 decibels, a quiet office or a library environment level of noise was acceptable. They've reduced that to 37 decibels. When my original Heat Geek survey did the noise calculations, we calculated that it would be 39 decibels. So meeting the previous 42, but failing on the 37. And remember, it's a logarithmic scale. So I believe every 2 decibels is a doubling. And so a 5 decibels is a 5 times. So you times 2, times 4, times 4 and a bit. And I think that's 5. Now, that's obviously disappointing. So now the regulation has been changed, the threshold has been lowered, and it means that the heat pump install would no longer be able to meet MCS criteria, which is annoying. But the engineer, Michael from Your Plumbing, was fantastic. He did kind of go through me what we would need to do to get a zero disrupt install. The Heat Geek Zero Disrupt service is built on making everything as regulated and autonomous and least variability as possible. So they're only going to install vaillant heat pumps because they get a good bargain on them, and they're a premium good unit. The Aerotherm sensor comfort is good, and that's like the open therm technology of weather compensation. The controls are good. There's loads of spare parts because it's a very frequently used heat pump, and so there's loads of engineers that are familiar with it. It can be easily repaired. There's loads of spares available and quick, so they're very happy with that. But R290 is propane. It's potentially explosive. It's flammable. So if it leaked out, and basically the rules are you can't be near a window or a door, because then it could come into your property and then the explosion could potentially happen in your house. Now, practically, is there going to be an explosion? No, there is not. But they've got to think about the 1 in a million or whatever it would be. So the regulations say no. Now, R32 is also a high temperature heat pump, not quite as high temperature as propane or R290. Don't ask me what R32 is though, because I don't know. But it can only get up to 55 degrees and not 65. So it means you'd have to fit the hot water tank with a immersion to do once every fortnight to take up the temperature from 55 to 60 or whatever you wanted to do to mitigate your Legionella risk. I'm not sure I would bother being a respiratory doctor and knowing how uncommon Legionella is. There's essentially 4 cases per year in the northeast based on health and safety data, and none of them are domestic. It's usually from a commercial or industrial property with blind ending pipes or something. It's never a domestic hot water cylinder. But either way, health and safety regs, they've got to think about the worst case scenarios or something. So I could potentially get an R32 heat pump. The ones that I'm familiar with are Samsung. And one of my commentators from the Netherlands has got one, and one of my commentators from England have got an R32 heat pump. And I think you're okay to put that in my rear yard. My rear yard at the back of my utility room is 2.1 metres from the property boundary wall, and is maybe, I think it's 3 metres across. And so that would mean that I could potentially fit a heat pump in that far corner where I've currently hung a bike off the wall and I've got a trampoline so they could move and go, and that could be where the heat pump goes. And we could potentially put the condensate pipe into one of the drains, or we could take up the pavers, level it off and get a sinkhole put in, soakaway put in. So that might be the plan. But none of those things can be done on a HeatGeek Zero Disrupt service. Because it's kind of it's not a one size fits all. You can choose how many radiators to change. You can choose what level of SCOP you want to go for. A 3.4, which would be more expensive than gas. A 3.7, which would be cheaper than gas. Or a 4, which requires the most upfront cost and requires and gets you the best performance. And you can decide what you want to do, capital outlay versus running costs, and you can decide what suits you best. I was shy at the 13.5 grand quote I had through HeatGeek, or a firm who worked with HeatGeek at the time, as a capital cost up front, and their option at the time for a non-zero disrupt, but working with the existing heating system would reduce that to about £9,000, and that was just for my taste still a little bit too much. But it sounds like I should have just gone ahead with that, because I could have got the radiators changed retrospectively. I don't have to pay VAT on any labour to do that, or perhaps just taught myself how to do it, and then upsize them to what his original plan was, and done that myself. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. So yesterday was my HeatGeek Zero Disrupt survey. I've talked about it through the video, but today Michael from Your Plumbing, excellent guy, seems like an excellent heat engineer, really professional. He said, well, I'm going to get in touch with the HeatGeek team and see what we can do. It's probably not going to be done through the HeatGeek Zero Disrupt scheme, but their other scheme, which I hadn't seen, is kind of like what they used to do. It's custom, high skill, high customizability, bespoke quoting and heating solutions. They're calling it now Black Label. So they've been in touch on the channel. Someone actually watches the channel. Breaking news. People tune into this channel apparently, including HeatGeek. Wow. I mean, everything I learned about heat pumps was through the HeatGeek videos. Maybe a Carbon Brief myth-busting article, talking to people on Twitter, and their Talk podcast. So that's really cool. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And they're going to be in touch, and hopefully we can get this heat pump journey sorted. What it's going to be, I don't know. I don't know any of the details yet. I don't know if I'll have to pay for a separate bespoke £800 survey, whether I'll have to get in touch with Michael separate to HeatGeek, or whether I'll have to pay the difference in the sort of survey quotations. Don't really mind. The money's not that important to me. But the fact that I can get a heat pump and I don't have to move, or I don't have to, as a EV renewable heat pump advocate, don't have to say my house can't be done and Ed Miliband screwed up the planning laws. This is kind of great news. So there is a customizable solution. It may be, let's speculate, it may be that in that rear part at the back of my yard, because I've got an L-shaped terraced house yard, the main long part is about 3 metres by 8 metres, and the shorter part of the L is 3 metres by 2 metres on the side, 2.1. So hopefully I can get an R30.
Wir sind hier auf der ISH 2025 mit der klaren Marschrichtung Next Level Vaillant. 3 Themen bringen wir. Einmal ein rund erneuertes und erweitertes Produktportfolio. Wir haben neue digitale Services, die den Kunden helfen, ihre Betriebskosten zu senken. Und das Dritte, wie eh und je, stehen wir für Teamplay mit unserer gesamten Mannschaft. Wir sind der Partner fürs Handwerk. Wir haben ein Feuerwerk an Innovationen hier auf der ISH. Wir sind zum einen, was jeder sehen kann, augenscheinlich hübscher geworden. Jetzt alle neuen Produkte in Anthrazit. Alles Neue auf R290, unserem nachhaltigen Kältemittel. Dadurch kriegen wir die Effizienz bis zu 15% höher. Und last but not least, wir haben Sicherheitskonzepte und dadurch sind unsere Wärmepumpen so einfach und flexibel aufstellbar im Inneren wie im Äußeren, wie bei keinem anderen in der Branche. Die Aurotherm Plus ist unser absoluter Highrunner. Sie ist die meistverkaufte Wärmepumpe in Deutschland. Wir haben sie total weiterentwickelt. Sie ist effizienter, sie ist leiser und hilft allen, Betriebskosten zu sparen. Mit der Aurotherm Perform gehen wir in ein neues Leistungslevel. Das ist die Wärmepumpe für große Häuser und das Mehrfamilienhaus. Die Aerotherm Pro ist eine komplette Neuentwicklung. Sie ist zum einen super kompakt, sie ist flexibel aufstellbar und damit schnell zu installieren und sie ist kostengünstig. Die neue Geotherm, auch eine neue Entwicklung, ist unsere Erdwärmepumpe. Wir haben ein patentiertes Sicherheitskonzept, um im Innenraum flexibel R290 nutzen zu können. Dieses Sicherheitskonzept ist unser klarer Wettbewerbsvorteil, weil wir die ersten und einzigen sind mit so einem super System. Die Weiterentwicklung in unseren Service und Software ist super wichtig, weil da steckt die Intelligenz drin. Wir haben super Produkte, die nochmal die Betriebskosten senken. Zum einen Optimierungsplus. Damit schaffen wir, dass die Wärmepumpen immer im optimalen Bereich im Einsatz sind. Und wir haben Energiemanagement, was nochmal hilft, die Betriebskosten bis zu 50% zu senken. Teamwork liegt tief in unserem Herzen. Wir sind ein Netzwerk mit unseren Superpartnern aus dem Handwerk. Nur so begeistern wir die Endkunden. Wir haben super neue Tools. Es ist noch einfacher zu beraten, zu planen, bis hin die Anlagen zu betreuen. Und von daher setzen wir auch da das nächste Level.
Right, hi everyone, we're back in my backyard. This is the kind of L-shaped terraced yard that is typical of these Victorian terrace homes with the rear extensions. Here is where my Vaillant heat pump is hopefully going. So, in Germany, as you've just seen now, I hope your German speaking is up to scratch. I put the subtitles at the bottom for you. But the new Vaillant Aerotherm Plus is out, and it is quieter, it is more efficient, and if you could see on some of those snaps, there is a glass case encasing all the refrigerant. Or maybe it's Perspex, whatever. But still, the R290 or propane refrigerant is double sealed. And therefore, there is less space that it needs in between windows, etc. So it will be able to be installed here. It'll still have size requirements for airflow around, so it might need 1/2 metre off this wall, so it might need to sit out a little bit proud, and it may need 1/2 metre here for airflow requirements, but essentially it's going to sit here. And if it is a double fan unit, because it's got to be 12 kilowatts, it'll still only be here, and there still will be no line of sight to that window. It's quieter anyway, so it might not matter, but it will mean that with the noise requirements for the MCS criteria, that we are still good to go to get a heat pump. It's out in Germany now, so perhaps if I hire a van, go over there and buy a Vaillant heat pump and come back, I could still get a local heating engineer or heat geek to install it for me. But in reality land, we're going to wait till next summer. It's going to be out in Q2 of 2026 in the UK. So hopefully we have the heat pump all sorted then. So this is just a week after Michael from Your Plumbing over in Prudda in the northeast came round to do the Heat Geek survey. I'm about to go jogging, hence the get up. It's a bit of a cold, miserable day, and I kind of wish that I had the heat pump in now on the weather compensation heating. You know, I could have my gas boiler on, but I really don't want to, so we barely ever use that. And I just sit warm under an electric blanket while doing some work in a freezing cold house. So that is the plan. So we'll forget R32, we'll forget this, that, and the other. We're just going to wait for the Vaillant heat pump to come on the market. Hey, it's going to be more efficient than the current models, which are already so efficient anyway, and I'm quite looking forward to it. And I think actually hiding it behind here is going to be the ideal place for it to be. It won't interfere with anything. Don't have to brick this up, which is kind of a ridiculous idea. Don't have to knock walls down, which is kind of a ridiculous idea. Although, if it went where the gate was, that would be okay. Put it 1/2 metre in and then put a little wall behind it. That would have been fine. But yeah, I don't really want to have to employ builders to take out gates, put new walls in and all that kind of jazz. So yeah, here we are. So hopefully in 6 months time, we will have a heat pump installed in the summer when demand's lower, and I can get one of these nice Vaillant Aerotherm Plus new 2026 heat pumps that are incidentally out in Germany now. So any questions, leave them below. Any advice, leave them below. Renewable Steve has left a comment on one of my videos saying, why don't you just get a Worcestershire Bosch heat pump, because they're a bit quieter. And I looked them up, they're about 53 or 55 decibels, the 7000 series. I think it would just not be able to go near here anyway. So the downsides of getting the Worcester Bosch heat pump would it'd have to be over here. On the original place, and I still don't know if that would meet the MCS criteria. I'll try and quickly look it up now, because someone, Will, on Blue Sky, sent me the link to the MCS Noise calculator, so I could put the dimensions in and see what works. But for now, that's all. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully I can show you how these Victorian terrace houses can get heat pumps, can be warmer, can be cheaper than gas, and can still be installed in silly places, and that finally, eventually, clever engineers have solved the problem. Right, I'm just getting over a cold. Right, let's see how bad I do at running them. See you in a bit, guys. Bye. Everyone, this is the view from my proposed heat pump position in the beginning, which I thought was fine and was fine on the original regulations, but this is the distance to these windows, only like 5.6 or 6.2 meters, something like that, and would fail the noise regulations as they've been reduced. So other options, well, it's not directional. So just because the heat pump's facing this way, you don't measure that way. Even if I put the heat pump, say, over here, this distance is not enough. It's still going to be something like 6 meters and would fail. If I put it over here, directly facing my property, and have the cold air blowing there, then this would still fail. That'd be something like 8 meters and would still fail. Up to the top would be fine. And so this is, one of my Dutch subscribers was telling me, why don't you just build a little planter wall here? Well, actually, it's got to block the line of sight, so it would actually have to be higher than that, and I'm not going to build a wall higher than my extension to block the view. Now, this is where I originally thought heat pump would be great, hidden out the way, bit of a storage area, bit of a mess. So excuse the mess. But if we fit it in here, you can still see that window with a high, you know, I'm 1.76 meters tall. So if you put this at the top of where the heat pump would be 1.5 meters for a vaillant, you can still see over my lean-to extension to that window, still fail on noise regulations. But an R32 unit, especially if we took it right in here, that's only 1.2 meters tall, suddenly your line of sight is, can't see it, can just about see these dormer windows, and they're 12 meters away, so suddenly that works. An R20 unit or a propane unit doesn't work because it doesn't work as a door anymore. I don't know, we could get it fixed, we'd get new locks put on or something and it would, but you can't have a propane heat pump too close to windows like that because of risks of propane getting in and exploding. However, there's so little propane in the heat pump that it's not a real risk. Que sera, sera. Regulations. So we could potentially get an R32 heat pump here without having to brick up that rear extension. Because for me, I would just brick up this. We've got a skylight, we could put a window in there, get the light in. That would be fine. That's certainly not a zero disrupt install though, is it? So it's not the ethos of that. So it don't have to be under heat pump black label, and I'd have to get the building work done myself because they're heating engineers and not builders. But perhaps without the window change, I don't know, I'll have to get advice from the Heat Geek team when it's ready, an R32 unit could be there. Now I like the look of the Samsung R32 quiet heat pumps. They apparently don't have a good rep though. And the larger non-quiet Samsung ones are fairly ugly. The LG Altherma ones are fairly ugly. The Hitachi ones are fairly ugly. The Grant Aeroma ones look okay. I don't know how well they perform. I've seen the scops at different temperatures, and at 45s they're something like 5.9 scop, and at 55s they're something like 3.7, so somewhere in between might be okay and reasonable. So perhaps we will get a heat pump from one of those brands, but yeah, don't listen to me on what the best brand is. Let's wait for the Heat Geeks to tell us what we'll go for. So fingers crossed this could still happen.
Right. Hi everyone, another interim update on my potential heat pump via the Heat Geek Zero Disrupt scheme. So we won't be using the Zero Disrupt scheme primarily because the placement of the heat pump will be a bit complicated. The pipe work to get the refrigerant, not refrigerant, it's going to be water, isn't it? To get to the central heating system might be a bit complicated. And even perhaps radiator sizes and placement might be a bit complicated and not a Zero Disrupt ethos scheme. Fair enough. Perhaps not impossible to convert to heat pump property, and you can convert uninsulated properties really well to heat pumps and get really good scops and get really good running costs, and it be cheaper than gas to run. However, is a more complicated, and we need to go down the black label. It's officially called Black Label Heat Geek. So it's more of like the original Heat Geek ethos of bespoke heat pump installs. Now, I previously just said, and you'll have just seen, that we need to use an R32 unit. That might not be the case. The update from Michael via text is that perhaps what we'll be able to do is use a famous manufacturer's new heat pump that's probably not announced. I don't want to get into trouble. New R290 heat pump that's coming out next year at an unspecified time or date that could be around the summer. And that won't have building restrictions about windows. So I mean, I don't have to brick up my defunct garden doors, French doors, rear doors, and that it could be placed back there, and that hopefully the dimensions mean that sound will be okay. We need to tuck it in close to the windows. So that is what is hopefully going to be done, but it will mean a delay. So you might not hear from me a while unless I get like official updates for when this is going to be available. And I'm not going to mention the brand here so as not to overspeak or get anyone in trouble. But that might what it be. So you might have a little pause while I wait for that to be available. So I'm not cancelling my potential heat pump install. I'm not going to do anything else. And I'm just going to wait to see if this new heat pump is going to be available and would be suitable for my property, which we hopefully anticipate it's going to be. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, leave any questions down below, and hopefully we'll get a Heat Geek Black Label install done soon. No idea on what the price might be. They're not going to quote me on a price for a product that's not out and probably they haven't given them a price, but that might be the best install. The only reason we'd get an update in the meantime is if I hear from them, or if Michael gets back to me to say if there is an R32 unit that they'd have confidence in or think could be done nice and quickly. So it means I'll have one last winter heating season of gas, but that's no biggie, is it? No big deal. In the grand scheme of things, be nothing compared to the carbon cost of my flight to Egypt. And yes, I'm a very naughty boy. So let's see how it goes. I'm excited, and I might just. Michael said he does solar as well, and seems like a really good, competent professional who does the best job possible. And if he knows where that heat pump might go, then and where the cylinder needs to go, then probably best using him, so that if he does place an inverter or batteries outside or inside in that utility room, then it's going to be away from the heat pump and won't interfere with that. Yeah, it seems like he's very good at that. So we might get a quote from them. Right, thank you everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My little hobby. We did get a comment from Heat Geek, or one of the Heat Geek staff. So yes, it's amazing to see that anyone actually tunes in or subscribes or actually watches any of my videos. So that was a bit of a surprise. This is kind of like me talking into the void. Do get some comments and things, but I kind of imagine this is my private little hobby on a Tuesday to keep me sane and give me a creative outlet because I don't have any others. So that's quite nice. Yeah, was surprised that actually Heat Geek were watching my video. Maybe because I did the silly little animations of Heat Geek versus Greg. Everyone would watch those Harry Hill animations, I'm sure, and have a wry little smile. And the animation quality was top notch, obviously. So yeah, thanks for tuning in and getting in touch, Heat Geek. And so yeah, behind the scenes they've been talking to Michael from Your Plumbing, and we might have a solution. So yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone. Like, comment, subscribe, and thanks to Edward for noticing that I pronounced product correctly. So yeah, I got Hootenly Spring incorrect, and he was right to pull me up on that. Yeah, I got Prida correct, so that was a thumbs up from Edward. So yeah, hi Edward in the comments. Ciao. Hey guys, so final thing I wanted to put in the video is just the difference between the scops for the new Vaillant Aerotherm Plus heat pump and the sound levels, and just to show you what a huge difference it's going to make. So we're down here at the sound levels. This is the 12 kilowatt heat pump here. So you can put out 12 kilowatts of heating power. Its power consumption might be 6 kilowatts, and what the scop you'll get for different heating temperatures is over there. So you can see that there. Now, come down here, and suddenly we've got that the sound level is going to be lower. It's going to be 60 rather than any higher. The smaller units are better. But the bigger unit, the 12 kilowatt, will be 60 decibels. So let's see how that compares against the tech sheets for the Vaillant Aerotherm Plus down here. So the 12 would be 60. So it's not actually going to be quite the back there, but is where it enables your positioning. The difference it's going to make is that I can hide it next to my window, round the corner, obstructed views to the neighbour's closest window, and therefore it's really that perspex box. And the lack of refrigerant leaking or potential for refrigerant leaking that can be placed close to my building. That's going to be the thing that makes the difference. So actually, it's not going to be quieter. Let's have a look at some of these Scott values. So if we have our average coldest day, I think mine is going to be -5. And we're going to go for, let's say we go for a 55 degree flow. Then we're going to get a 50 degree flow. We're going to get a Scott of 3.9. Happy with that. If we have to go for a 55 degree flow, we're going to get 3.6, which again is still cheaper than gas. So happy with that for just the coldest days. But on your warmer days, where it's 2 degrees C, and you are running them at 45 degrees, you can get 4.2. So brilliant, much cheaper than gas. Looking forward to that, especially running on an EV tariff. So that is the old one. What about the new one? The Germans display their stuff a little bit differently. Don't quite know how this responds to what they're talking about, but rest assured that this is the 12 kilowatt heat pump. So where are you going to get your seasonal efficiencies? What does this mean? It's not quite the same numbers, but perhaps this is the number here that you'll still be getting a SCOP of 5.4. It's an incredible increase if you can heat your house at 35 degrees. And if you're trying to do it at 55, you only get 2. I don't know. I don't know if this is equivalent data really. It's all a bit bizarre. We'll see. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. See you soon in the next one.